He didn't say he wasn't, so I don't know. If they don't tell me they're not coming, I assume they're coming. Henry was a surprise.
Yay,
I don't
now
know.
we're delighted. It's a great surprise.
Yes.
We have the most conscientious student representative of all the boards.
I think so too.
This is, we talked about it. Don't laugh, we're gonna do it around us. Victor, do you want to take roll?
Yes, I. All right. For a winner,
Here.
Tom Graham,
Yes, here.
Kathy Leo,
Here,
Dana Mulder,
Here.
and Henry Crizel.
Here.
So we do have a quorum. We are just missing Bob.
bring this into the text.
Do we have a? Would someone like to make a motion to approve minutes from the May 16th? I will. I would like to approve that we are. I'd make a motion that we approve the minutes from May meeting. I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Board communications, Victor? Do we have anything there?
A couple of things, just an update really that we still have a lot of trees that either need to be trimmed up or removed, and we have contracted with Johansson's to do some of those. And staff obviously is gonna take care of the ones that they can, but the larger trees need to be removed at Johansson's, but we try to get the best price from them as possible, and that usually means we tell them to fit us in their schedule and they can do it. So it could be this week, it could be 3 months from now. So you'll see Johansson's out there probably working on some city trees.
And these are both removal and trimming?
Yeah, and if there's trimming that needs to be done, like our electric department, they trim, for any limbs that are near wires. But for trees that need removal or stump grinding, that's gonna come from a larger company like Johansson's or whoever else we contract with. And those, again, we're looking at first the most worst condition trees, do that. So,
How many do we think we have?
we probably need to get to a couple dozen this year. I don't know how many Lucas is contracted with, but I know a few that he has contracted with that he wants to get rid of or take down, so. But I don't know exact number. I don't have an exact number of trees. Some include in the rights of way uptown where there was damage. Others include like along potentially those birches up front at the park here on the waterfront. We actually do have a donor that's willing to donate a tree to replace some of the trees we're removing there at the waterfront. So we have some donations coming in as well, so that's good. Not a whole lot, but keep on pushing it out there. Tree donation program.
I have a question too,
Yeah.
Victor, on, does the city address like trees on private property, the overhang sidewalks that have like widowmakers in them, for example?
Sometimes. So if we go by and see that there's a potential hazard or something that interferes with pedestrian movement or vehicles, we will send a notice to that homeowner saying, you are obstructing pedestrian movement or obstructing, the sidewalk or street, and we send them a note to remove that. Of course, we mostly focus on hedges that usually are overgrown in the sidewalk, so that's usually where our complaints come from. But we're complaint driven on that. So if we do get someone say, hey, if there's branches hanging out into the driveway, now if it's overhead, and the idea that it just may fall one day, that's not clearly spelled out in the city code. So that might just be a letter to the resident, letting them know that it could happen. But if it's actually interfering where, you know, your head's hitting it when you're walking through, or, you know, your arm is hitting this branch or something.
That's an interesting question though. So let's say this giant widowmaker on Summit Street falls and kills somebody. Is that the city's liability because it's the sidewalk, or the homeowners because it's their tree?
And without giving legal
Yeah.
advice on it, I would, in most cases, that's usually the property owners, whoever owns the tree. Now, in some cases, if it's been brought to the attention that there's a potentially hazardous condition on a city property, and the city hasn't addressed that, yes, it could be a liability issue for the city, but those usually amount to non-natural features. So for example, if there was a dangerous garbage can, metal sticking out of it, and you knew it was dangerous and people were. But for trees from someone else's property, that's very unlikely. But it doesn't mean the risk is not there. There's always a chance of something go after the city or something like that, but I think it's very, very, very minimal in this case. Obviously, if the tree on our property and someone says, hey, this tree is dangerous, and our arborist or our professionals have noticed that, like, yeah, this is a failing tree and we haven't done anything about it, then there's more risk there. The risk is more if it's in a tree in the right of way that we planted, as opposed to a tree in a park like Kiwanis Park, which are just a natural area. It's not like we're the dangerous tree there. So there's lots of dangerous trees, as opposed to replanting the tree in the right of way. So those are different scenarios. But yes, if you do notice something in the right of way, just let me Lucas know, and we'll investigate whether or not it is.
And what is the city's, is there a requirement for homeowners to, when a lot of these trees fell like behind the Harbor Light Building? There's a ton of
Just, yeah,
trees down. Is there any requirement that those be removed? If it's on private property?
there could be. We have an ordinance that we use on one, after we got a complaint about one individual, I think it was on State Street, between NY18 and Lake Street. I forget the address, so I won't even say it anyway, but they had a lot of damaged trees just piled everywhere, and someone made a fire hazard complaint. From that standpoint, so we had the fire chief and the police chief go out there just to take a look at it. They didn't go on the property, just from the neighbor's property, and they said it could potentially be a hazard, so we sent that individual a letter asking them to clean it up. If it's just trees on the ground and we don't think it's usually when they're piled together, it's more of a fire hazard than it's if there's branches scattered here, but it would be issue property specific. So if we get a complaint, just let us know the specific address and we'll look into it. Because in some cases, yes, it would be considered a city code violation potentially. In other cases, it might not. It all depends on, I think the code is very, that gives authority to the police and fire chief to make a determination if there is a hazard on the property. Otherwise, we just have some light language, and that light language is really geared toward dilapidated buildings and situations like that cause more than just it's not just a hazard for fire, but it's also a public nuisance for other reasons, from sightliness to danger to step, on the properties.
For what it's worth, we did approve the agenda last month.
Okay, yeah, so I mean, it's not on the agenda. I mean, you guys can do it however you want. It's the bylaw says it's the board's call on what the agenda should look like. So this is the format we've used for a while. If you want to add approval of the agenda to it.
So then if I have something I want to talk about, I'll just pipe in during new business or something.
Yeah, there's two different ways. So if you had approval of the agenda, you could ask to make it amendment to agenda or under new business. If you want something to discuss, you can bring it up and we can talk about it, and then we shouldn't make any decision about it. It would go on the next meeting's agenda to make a decision. But it could also be brought up if it's just a simple communication. You could bring it up under board communication and say, I just want to share something with you, as opposed to having a discussion about it.
What do you think? Anybody here? Don't care. I guess the only advantage to having a way to add it to the agenda is that you could actually take action at this meeting instead of waiting.
It's up to you. Or it's up to you.
Right, so do you want to, shall we vote on whether to add the approval of the agenda?
Yeah, sure.
And then how do we make a motion to add things? This would be one
To add a specific item,
to the agenda.
yeah, you could just say that, well, first what we should do is you could just bring it up under board communications like you're doing right now, say I have this topic I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Motion to add it to the
Okay.
new business.
Just a few things, some of them are kind of follow-ups, maybe they are just more board communications, but next tree canopy article. Status and the installation of the 15 trees that we got from council last year. And last month we said we were going to have relief on this month's agenda, and when I say last month, so relief. And then, sorry guys, the last one is how do we get the vegetation management plan completed? I feel like we should finish what we started. It was approved by council. I don't know if it was last year either.
Sorry.
I make a motion to approve the agenda with those changes.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, or do you want to vote, Victor?
Yeah, you should. Yeah. Yeah, no, you can, all in favor is fine.
Oh,
Sorry.
all in favor?
I
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Anything else on the board communications, Victor?
No.
Okay, public comment? Anybody on Zoom?
See any, no.
All right, so next on the agenda is the old business, a recap on Arborfest. Seems
Yeah.
like it was forever ago.
I know, I wasn't there, so I'm just, you all to give your insights on what worked well and what should change for next year.
What if we started with Henry?
Thought it went well. I mean, I think we had a decent turnout. I think it was smart to have it in the park next to the
Yes.
farmers market. Because that definitely drove a lot more traffic towards the event, but
To the point where you might even say, let's do it there every year.
I concur. It's a great idea.
me too.
I made a little list of what I thought the best parts were. Location, of course. Everybody loved those birch seedlings, so I
Yes,
don't
they
know how
did.
we pick a really good seedling next year, but that was good.
I got one still growing.
I do
Good.
too. Hoping it survives.
Let's see. The librarian was a surprising huge hit. There were like 20 kids listening to her, so we'll continue with that, I hope. Yep. Hot dogs were huge. How many hot dogs did you make?
Thanks idea.
Bill thinks
I think over
200.
200.
Bill said 200 hot dogs. So that's something I think it was very cool. The mayor was doing the cooking.
Yeah.
Craft was fun. We had a lot of traffic at the posters. So I think maybe that's a nice thing to have too, like for a public information thing every year. Oh, I did have a craft idea for next year. I brought it, but you ever seen?
Of course you do.
Huh?
Of course you do.
Have you ever seen those trees that are twisted and made out of wire? They're almost like a little art form.
Hmm.
All right. If
Are
I
they
can,
twisted this way?
no. What I brought it.
We can bring a sample.
Make one.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty handy. I think bingo's good. kind of a filler in. Okay.
Yeah, any
yeah.
other comments there? Anna, did you have other ones?
Yeah.
Kathy?
Just overall, a victor for you because you weren't able to be there. It was great. It was great. It was like the farmer's market just flowed over and everyone came over. It was, I think it was a great success. And the list of best things was all wonderful. There is things that need improving.
Oh, that's good.
Was Eric Hemingway is a wonderful storyteller. He is actually a draw because people love to listen to him, including me. You can hear him. We were right next to the farmer's market and right behind the music tent.
And it was really windy.
And it was really windy. So there,
And he didn't speak when he was supposed to, so I don't know what happened.
that was a little off schedule. It was a half hour off schedule. Yeah. But regardless, we just couldn't hear him. Even if you were standing up and standing close to him, it was very hard. So there must be some kind of
Rachel has a
microphone,
mic, yeah.
you know, a portable
Just
mic
like,
or something
Rachel
that
has
he could use. I know they don't have electricity out there, do they? Or
This is battery powered.
okay, yeah.
It is fine.
Anyway, so that was one thing. And of course, the easels, we need a better way to set them up because they just got blown
Yeah,
over
because
constantly.
it was so windy.
But that's doable. We can do that. And the sign it was on post, but it was next to the ground. So if there would be some way of making it a little bit higher off the ground and a better way of displaying it. But these are all fixed.
What were they again? Secure the easels.
Secure the easels, a better
Microphone.
microphone for any speakers. And
And maybe Eric's more in the middle of it so that
yeah,
people weren't really there yet.
exactly. And our arborist, he did a little speaking too. To get people to come over and show them pruning and you couldn't. Unless you happened to be standing there, you wouldn't know what he was doing, because again, you couldn't hear.
Any things that you think went really well or did not?
Well received, well attended, and I think it's a wonderful place to have it. The crowd is going for
To the market.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And whose idea was to move it downtown, but sure as hell it worked well.
I think it might help too if we had it on the same weekend every year. If that's
Yeah.
possible,
Yeah,
because then people would get used to it.
The first weekend of farmer's market.
that's when we usually have done it with coincide with Memorial Day weekend. We've got something different with the fall. Best last year, but I agree. I definitely think it's a bigger draw. Yeah, to have it on Memorial weekend.
And I thought, I agree with everything that people said, and I think it was really timely to have the issue about pruning because of the ice storm damage. So I think people were really interested, seemed very interested in that, and coming and looking at the easels.
Oh, we made some money too, didn't we?
Yeah, you did strap that off. I don't know how much it was.
$180
In donations,
next to the hot dogs.
excellent. Excellent, that probably paid for a lot of this. Because we also had the two sponsors.
That's true, yeah, we did.
Anything else on the Arbor Fest? Okay. Next one is new business, the Conservation Commission ideas.
Yeah, so at our May meeting, the tree board went over its top three things they wanted to work on this year, and Conservation Commission was one of those. And if you guys recall, we are a tree board, but the idea was of going to council to expand the tree board into more of a conservation and environmental protection to to look at more than just trees, but also habitat issues or natural issues. So what I did was I kind of explored what other communities do. I worked on the Conservation Commission. I staffed one when I was working in Vermont. And they're more common in New England, but they do have one in actually here in was it Oak Park, I believe I put in here, yeah.
Yeah.
And they call theirs a Recycling and Environmental Conservation Commission. But their duties really quickly here, advise DPW and council regarding information outreach, services related to recycling, yard waste collection, et cetera, environmental education, discussion about energy savings, things to do that residents can do to conserve water quality and water resources, tree planting and maintenance for environmental protection, and other topics related to recycling, waste reduction, environmental protection. I looked at dozens of different conservation commissions and environmental commissions throughout the country and asked what would also be relevant to us here in Harbor Springs. Recycling, of course, is one of them. Trash and litter, pollution, especially of the water, but also land, air, trees, habitat protection, water quality, ecosystem health. The shoreline protection is big here. Sensitive habitats. Ours is the bluff. We do have some small dunes out there, but most of the bluff. Protection of the water supply, groundwater supply, flood control, which could be an issue here. Storm damage prevention, invasive species. Our master plan has several goals that spread across conservation and environmental issues that we just really haven't touched on too much here at the city. And that one of them includes creating an inventory of key natural elements and sensitive environmental features, creating an environmental protection plan, developing and adopting a tree management and planning ordinance, which of course we have some ordinances there. We also talked about reviewing existing regulatory structures that would preserve environmental areas such as dunes, bluffs, hills, and natural topography. Developing an approach to acquiring or protecting natural areas. Investigating the placement of more recycling receptacles on public property and recycling campaigns. Talking about trash removal services, encouraging the city to investigate our fleet of vehicles, such as our snowplows, police vehicles, to slowly transition to a mix of energy efficient or electric vehicles and equipment. One thing we did several years ago was switch to hybrid vehicles for the police department, which has saved a lot of money on gas. Task forces study smart water conservation, rain sensors or other irrigation practices, utility department plan that focuses on clean energy, vehicle efficiency, renewable energy options within the electric department, and then pros and cons of an energy efficient program. So there's a lot there that the city could be doing on energy, electricity, and just general environmental conservation issues. We do some of them at staff. For example, we do have an energy efficiency program through the NPPA, and that's where you get your light bulbs, et cetera. But could more be done with that stuff as well. So those are ideas in my mind. Those are ideas of what such a conservation environmental commission. Those are things that board can be working on, as well as some of the things that's listed here, and I listed here under just potential ideas of other things. So my suggestion, if the board wants to go to council to recommend this, is call it Environmental and Conservation Commission, only because the Conservation Commission is more narrowly focused. If you expand to environmental, and you're talking about energy and environment as opposed to just preserving and protecting.
Like that.
So
I have a question
Yeah.
about the title. It would still be an advisory board
yes.
with no power to do anything, just to maybe do research and
So yeah.
present. So,
When we say no power to do anything, it means no power to make an official policy act without
sure,
council.
yeah,
Yeah, you can still do things like educate and all the other things, right?
yeah. But what's the difference between an advisory board and a commission?
Yeah,
Should it be called a commission?
that's, the word commission, so again, a lot of New England towns like Massachusetts have a conservation commission, which is actually specified in their state law that it should be called a commission.
Mhm.
We don't have that here, so, the only thing that we have specified in state law that should be called a commission is the planning commission. State law has a whole thing on saying a planning commission, it's a whole state statute, so it's called a planning commission for that reason. They also call, state law has in the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act, a zoning board of appeals, is what it should be called.
Mhm.
We have a harbor commission, which is advisory. We have a parks board, which is not, which is also advisory, what they're called two different things, right? So, I mean,
It's just
I can act, it
semantics.
could be semantics. I could ask Jim to see if he thinks there's if there's legal reasons why one should be called one versus the other.
Good
I don't
question.
see it. It's a good question. I don't see it at this point, but I was actually thinking about that too. You know, it could be an environmental conservation board. So
That
the
sounds
planning
like a
commission-
lawyer Or something, I don't
you
know.
know, the zoning board is just called a board, but they have quasi judicial powers that they rule
Yeah.
on. They have hearings, they rule on stuff, so they have power. They don't need to go to council to get something approved, right? They can approve their a variance or their appeal or not, so. I think it's a semantic thing in this issue, but there are, there are legal differences in certain statutes about committee versus commission versus board, so I'll ask Jim. I'll ask Jim about that question. It's a good one. So those are just my ideas based on what I know, but I don't know if that's the same.
Next to the boss.
You guys have,
Yeah.
I'm good.
I thought this was excellent, first of all.
Yes. It's really comprehensive. And I think it was helpful that, see that Oak Park has one and kind of compare what they cover in that versus what our master plan suggests that the city work on too.
And I looked for other Michigan ones, there weren't really many Michigan ones that were, their environmental conservation commission, so. I don't know
Kind of
why,
Surprising, yeah.
but it just may be that they incorporate those aspects into other boards, or they just have staff deal with those issues and. So, yeah, I don't know, but
I got a semantics one, like, what if instead of recycling, we called it waste reduction, which would include recycling, but also could include food recycling.
composting, yeah, yeah.
That's kind of a real big hot button right now. And I know there's a couple spots in town where you can do it, including the New York restaurant. Victor, what were you thinking about trash and litter? I didn't quite.
Okay, so I was really thinking about, two things. First was, I think it's less of a problem, but from a litter perspective, do we have issues, how do we control issues with any, litter on the streets or in the roads or in the water? And our DPW does a pretty good job of cleaning up. But the other was more so is, advising on, where and how we could have more trash receptacles. If need be, so you're looking at, do we have adequate supply for, a good example of this, which will eventually come up probably at the DDA or city council, is the parking lot behind the New York restaurant has a dumpster area. A dumpster area is a public area. Is it being managed well? Is it, could we manage it better, et cetera? I think those are some advice on, do we have enough spots where people or businesses can dump trash publicly? We had bins at the Harbor Master Building, the bigger bins that are supplied by the New York restaurant and other businesses in that public lot by the New York parking lot. So those are some things I was thinking. I don't think there's anything major, but just do we have adequate services and facilities for trash? Another, this is beyond probably this idea of commission's purview, but we have a lot of instances where people dump their household waste into our city trash. Like Kiwanis Park, it's easy to get away with it. People just go and dump stuff in there. And we know because you see
And they don't have to
bags
pay for
of
it.
stuff and we sometimes, it's against our ordinance, but people do it all the time. They dispose of their trash. So is there a way, we could, discourage that or are there opportunities to provide? other avenues for people to dump trash, or do we even have our own, like we recycle, we pay for our residences recycling, to have recycling service, you know, should we, to taxpayers, pay for garbage service too? I'm not saying we should, but that could be a question that eventually comes up. Why are we paying for recycling? Because we want to encourage people to recycle.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's what I was thinking. I don't think it's a major issue here, but it could become in the future. You would want to have broad enough ability to, you know, investigate that.
Years ago, before you came up here, we had a problem at Irish with people filling the dumpsters. They even filled the cardboard dumpster with trash. And we put up a phony camera on the wall and put stickers on the dumpster that said essentially, smile, you're on candid camera, with an arrow, and it stopped instantly. I mean, that night it was over.
Yeah, because they have a camera, say they do with the recycling at the Harbor Market
Yeah.
to discourage people from the stuff.
And you see that, and they've had posts before,
We
especially
do
in the
that
holiday
Monday.
seasons where it's overflowing, those recycling things. And, you know, other concerns we could have too, that we might want to address is, you know, if we do like, if they're grease traps, are they, when they dump out their food waste, are they getting into the drains, into the water system, like, you know, like into the sewer system or the storm drain? So to make sure like those kinds of things that we're not, you know, our trash and litter is not. Another thing that we're doing that that council approved a while ago is for, to have these little, they're called little traps. So they're gonna, the little trap, not the little conservancy, the river, the watershed, in Petoskey, they're gonna come and install these traps on our storm drains to trap more material as opposed to having those go run into the water. So we're instituting this program, you know, and to see how it works. So in conjunction with them. So like, that's another thing that, you know, with related to trash that the board can work on.
Another semantics one on pollution. I wonder if we would say threats to water quality, threats to soil quality, and threats to water instead of just pollution. It seems like it might angle more towards, you know, education of residents and things like that. Which probably is one of our main purposes. And I guess at some point, maybe, yeah, we have some kind of vision statement or something like that.
Yeah, this is just the
Yeah.
beginning. We would need to.
Yeah, yeah.
But, yeah, I think, you know, threats, pollution is the most common, I mean. Really, the city itself doesn't investigate, you know, pollution to the extent, like you have the Great Lakes, you know, Department of Great Lakes Energy, they're the one, Environment Energy, they're the ones that are gonna, Eagle is gonna investigate any serious, you know, pollution of the water, for example, the bay, like if there was a business, which we don't have, well, we could have businesses on the water, but if there were, you know, manufacturing plants that were releasing stuff in the water, they're investigating that. Pollution in the air, you know, we really don't have a way to monitor here, you know, unless we had, and we don't have many factories or.
Well, trash burning, you know, we
Yeah,
don't do
but
that.
those things,
Yeah.
right, so there are small, things, you know, so like you said, education, you know, are you burning plastic? You know, and what's your campfire, right?
Big tires, yeah.
So, yeah, so that is pollution. Whether you wanna call it threats or, I mean, doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, I guess. Do we want to have something in there about energy conservation, water conservation?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what Oak Park, and I think they kind of had some language on there, and. I mean, the way we could phrase this is, you know, here's the purpose of the board. And say, these are some of the topics and more, you can, and just say it, this is not exclusive, right? Cause there are gonna be other things that come up too, right? So you could say that, you could say conservation, and we do have some issues with that, and. Part of this where this gets might get a little, I won't say wonky, but with the tree board technically advises the city on stuff that have city limits, but our water, for example, we have a water utility that extends beyond city limits, right? We give water to West Traverse, right? We've had many cases on Harbor Point, for example, where they just use an absurdly amount of water. Just not, it's absurd, you know, it was something, a few years ago, we've had to put out a notice that, you know, to conserve water, because in the summertime, there were so many people here just watering their lawns. And so we looked at different ways, like, could we have a different rate system for people who are watering their lawns versus people who are using drinking water, right? So you pay more to water your lawn. Anyway, those are all ideas that you guys could work on that would affect, you know,
Could we list those things? So I don't, energy conservation, water conservation.
see why not.
And then we've talked about dark sky initiatives. Would that be something that this board could deal with?
Depends on if you think dark skies as like light pollution and noise pollution, for example, are.
It's all pollution.
So, I mean, that's,
Yeah,
I was thinking the same thing.
You know,
well,
noise
and it's also
pollution-
habitat. Happens in insects and animals.
That's true,
Yeah.
yeah.
and so, you know, noise pollution, you know, we did have the noise committee through noise pollution.
Mhm.
But so, yeah, I mean, I don't. It's an environmental concern.
And then we talked about this years ago on tree board, but you know, climate concerns, like is there anything the city should or could be doing to address that?
Such as what?
Don't know. Conversation to come.
Or, you know, just instinctually, what would city do, for example? I mean, climate concerns usually come through CO2 emissions and other emissions, and idling rules for trucks, like even have it for city vehicles, you know, whether or not they should idle or not. And there's also always a big debate on that, because sometimes it's just costs more to keep on turning off
Mhm.
these big trucks, vehicles, and sometimes they need to be kept running for the work that they're doing, so. Anyway, that's just one small example of idling, idling something that we can prevent or reduce.
On protection of public and private water supply and groundwater supply. I tend to think that's kind of like not much we can do about it, but maybe that's like an education aspect to this, like what can
Well-
residents do?
We do have, every 5 years, we go through. Actually bring it up on our website, it's actually pretty important. We get federal, state or federal money, I forget which one, but we get to update our water supply protection plan. Yeah, what it's called, we just did it last year. But it's pretty, I think it's our wellhead protection plan. So we have we get our map of where our water comes from, right? For groundwater, and that shows where it comes from, but really, the plan, I know this is turned around, okay, let me see if I can turn it around. I don't know if I can do it on this right now. Oh, yeah, I can. So, you know, our water actually, our water, the city of Harbor Springs water system actually comes from up here in Pleasant View Township. And so how do we protect that water? You know, so that's what our wellhead protection plan does. And it includes goals and tactics and strategies for the city to apply. So in many ways, it does include education, but there could also be other other things that we do. So I think there is actually, we do get money. We have this group comes in here, these engineers. And they do this, help us go through this planning process with us every 5-6 years. Because we do get funding for it. If we didn't get state, or I think it's state funds, if we didn't get state funds for it, I don't know if we would do it, but it does cost quite a bit to have it. But anyway, yeah, so we do. So I think there is stuff we could do. There is stuff that we can do.
And then the whole thing of groundwater, you know, with using herbicides, pesticides,
Gasoline, diesel, all last. So yeah, it's there is stuff that we can do.
I think flood control is interesting too, because I think, you know, like, I don't know where floodplains are in the city. I used to know because we lived on Main Street right in the middle of one, but, you know, to let people know and, let's see.
Yeah, I think at the
And
planning
then maybe
commission,
an education thing on, you know, what people could do to, mitigate their exposure to floods or.
yeah, I think Beckett and Rader at the planning commission last year, the year before, gave a presentation on the risks, flood risks of once in 100-year, once in 1,000-year storms and how those are becoming more frequent, and showed that the updated flood risk area for downtown is actually quite larger than it was a while ago. So the risks from those storms are pretty significant. And so I think this board, if they wanted to, could look at ways to mitigate those specific risks. What the solutions are, I don't know.
But also from
They're
an
usually expensive.
education perspective, because I heard in our program the other day, and they were talking about how few people have flood insurance.
Yeah.
4% or something like that. Because if they're not in a specific flood zone, then they don't think about getting, you know, they're not required to get it for mortgage purposes or whatnot. So I think from an education standpoint, it'd be a great idea too, not just mitigation.
I'm just thinking ahead to, like, you know, how we have our project list for tree board. If we were to do something like that, you know, maybe there'd be a category for identifying like mapping and things like that, and a category for things that are policy related, things that are education, outreach related.
Yeah, a lot of work would have to be done to figure out what the board would be working on going forward. But
And priorities for them.
priorities, yeah, that,
Well, and then strategy for implementation, like Parks Board, this was, I don't know, I guess shortly after it formed, Rachel found somebody, I don't remember if it's Michigan State or U of M, an intern that came in and did a bunch of mapping about the parks and, you know, hot links to see what's at each park. So maybe if we could find a program like that or an intern or something like that to help with mapping some of these things,
yeah, I
it
guess,
would be interesting.
yeah, it depends on where, I mean, the master plan does call again for an environmental protection plan. I mean, that's one thing it does call for. And working on that would require some sort of mapping.
But like where are critical ecosystems?
That's
you know,
what that,
things-
that's what
yeah.
that calls for, yeah. I mean, we have two things, right? We have one of the master plan goals is to create a detailed inventory of key natural elements, it's the environmental features. And then we also have create an environmental protection plan that utilizing that data presented in that natural features inventory. So yeah, that would go hand, I mean, that would, what we would need to do, I mean. We do have some of that identified in the master plan currently, through the master plan process, such as, you know, the bluffs, some other sensitive areas, shoreline, but is there anything else?
Another thought I had too is, you know, the Petoskey Harbor Springs Community Foundation has twice a year grant cycles, like whether we could apply for a grant to research some of the stuff that's beyond our capabilities. So we don't know what those are yet, but. Oh, and then another thing I had was, this has pros and cons, but what if we made this a 7-person board if we're gonna be doing a lot more? And then also, would we want a township representative? As you pointed out, you know, like with where the groundwater comes from for the well, and also like the townships are part of our watershed, things like that. And then maybe, I don't know, thinking way down the road, you know, maybe there'd be some advocacy for having financial help with some of these things if there are any programs that actually cost something that we want to do.
I think that decision is probably best left up to council, how many people are on the board and who should serve on the board.
But they wouldn't really talk about it unless we made a recommendation.
Yeah, I really think though, that's their purview. I think the board composition. It's
Well, Parks, when we took it to,
yeah, I understand.
we recommended.
I understand. I think who serves on the board is can be a touchy political issue. And there's arguments for both sides. I think it's better left to the policymakers to really look into that one. Just my opinion. I don't.
To decide if it expanded to include
Townships, yes, yeah, absolutely. It works for the harbor, the reason the Harbor Commission utilizes it is because the marina is bordered by the townships from Wequatonson and the Harbor Point. So when the Harbor Commission was formed, it was formed to at least have some opinions from them because they use the marina users. And also it's a waterfront operation, it's an enterprise. It's not taxpayer funded. So that was another reason why it could include non-residents. The planning commission is dictated by state law, so it allows up to 2 non-residents. And so same thing with the DDA. The other boards we have, since we're all strictly talking about city finances, city budget, and advice about city finances and city budget and city policy, did a township person be advising city council on how to spend city dollars and advising city staff on how to spend their time. And I think that's a question that's better not discussed or made a recommendation from us, and better let the council discuss that heavier political subject, whether or not township people should be
I think we
advising.
just start with city people.
And that's what our city ordinance says, that all the boards, aside from those that are required by state law, our city ordinance should be filled by city residents. So to change that would require a political discussion. Anyway, that's why I just think it's better to just say what you guys want to do. These are the things we want to work on, this commission work on. And let council deal with those details of who should be the decision makers.
I feel like we should say if we do want a bigger board.
You can say that. I just,
What do you guys think?
What would a bigger board help?
I don't think it would be as helpful.
I just feel like we're gonna be covering so many more things, like, if people wanted to do research into various things, then it's not like 5 people, trying to deal with a lot of stuff.
Well, we're in such early days here. It makes sense to me that we get going on this, and as we go along, see if it's going to be a
You can
huge
do
amount
that
of work,
too.
and if we.
I was just thinking if we're redoing the bylaws.
Well, if there's gonna be this kind of board, there'll be no more tree board. So those bylaws will go away, and then you'll have new bylaws for this environmental conservation commission. So it's gonna be a completely different setup. And I think personally, there's pros and cons to having more and less people. I mean, if you can have more people on a board, and if the idea is to have more people on a board to take on more work, well, is staff gonna take on that work? Are you gonna give more staff more work to do than they already have to do? So I think you gotta, no matter how many people are on the board, you gotta pace yourselves with what we're doing. I mean, that's the first thing.
What the priorities are.
And I can tell you, we have large boards like the Harbor Commission. And then we have smaller boards like the tree board, and I think the tree board gets just as much done or more done sometimes than the Harbor Commission. Not to put the Harbor Commission down, they have different roles, but sometimes conversations can drag out on topics over the years. So I just, there's pros and cons. I don't think that should be, I really think that setup should,
That could evolve, I guess, but
could evolve, and I think.
Yeah.
I just think there's a lot of people that would have interest in this,
There would
and, it does cover a broad amount of things for 5 people to be making decisions on, or not making decisions, but recommendations. So if you guys, do you want to wait then? You can talk about it.
I would wait,
Start
because
out
I-
with 5.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
automatically think more is better in this setting.
Yeah.
Just,
You just like the little horseshoe. Okay,
I think, let's go to council with the recommendation on that you want to see this board, and here's what this board can do. And then we'll work out the details. those can get lost in the weeds. on
And
those.
they may or may not agree, that is a good
That's
idea.
exactly.
One last thing that I had, I say it all the time, but, public input on this, you know, maybe a great way to start would be to do a survey to see, you know, have residents rate these things on a scale of 1 to 10 or something like that. How important do you feel those things are? And that might help guide us on what we would.
Yeah, I think again, that would be, once the council decides, if they decide to put this together, then that's. Because then, you know, they could have, honestly, I mean, not to, it could be a whole new board and they have to make new appointments. You all would
that's
have to,
interesting,
you'd all
yeah.
have to apply again, because we'd be getting rid of the tree board and replacing it with the board, so. Just saying that, so whatever we think here might not, I'm not saying it won't matter, but it could be a few different people on here, so.
Yeah. How do you think the council will react?
I don't really know. I hear quite a bit of comments. We got too many boards now. I don't know what everybody else.
Well, this would take the place of tree board, I guess, or would
Yeah, it would,
Yeah.
it would,
add to tree boards.
it would be a new board, get rid of the tree board and make it and incorporate the tree board's duties into the Environmental Conservation Commission board, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it all depends, right, on how much, what council thinks the priorities are and the issues are facing. these things.
Never discussed it to my knowledge, but
I think it was brought up once in the tree board report. I think in the tree board report to council, I think in the presentation, we had it that we were talking about this idea going forward.
Yeah, beginning of the
But
year.
we didn't have a discussion about it at council. There was no substantive discussion. So,
You feel like you could support it?
not sure. I'd have to think about it, but. Seems like all we've done here is talk about expanding the scope, not talking about trees or anything.
But important issues, water quality.
It's a pretty big item.
Yeah.
Do we have, you should get 2 green stripes on your thing. Is that all the same aquifer where we get our water?
oh, let me go back to that. So, yeah, all the water, this is a wellhead protection area. So basically, the water that comes into our system comes from these areas, these yellow areas. So the water that you're drinking here from our system is not water that's found in the ground of Harbor City limits. It's from Pleasant View Township down to Little Traverse, West Traverse Township.
All the same aquifer though, right?
Yeah, there's different ones though that go to, well, I think so.
Looks like 3 aquifers.
Uh, yeah, it's 3, but let me have to read the plan more in detail for that. To answer that question. So 10-year, but anyway, yeah, this whole plan's on the website. It's being renewed. So.
So really what we're talking about today is just making a recommendation to council.
Yeah, what I can do is incorporate all these ideas plus the comments that I had from you all into memo to council saying this is a suggestion by the tree board to create an environmental conservation commission board that would have these purposes and these responsibilities. And if council wants to further explore it, then what we do, I'd probably just like we do with all our other boards. If the council approves it, I'd have Jim Raymer prepare bylaws. And then council can decide whether or not those bylaws, number of people, membership, they want to change that or not.
And Victor, would the idea be to put the top priorities of those? Or would you
No,
have
I don't think we would. I would just say, we would just
to
say
include
priority.
Many of the or.
Yeah, priorities and responsibilities include,
But
yeah,
not
but not,
exclusive of.
yeah, it would be. And we could even make it just more broad, you know, you talk about environment, energy and conservation, you know, and within each of those subsections, you could have like conservation could include trees, habitat, you know what I'm saying? So we could keep it very broad as a mission statement, but then, you know, the broader you keep it, the more you can include But I mean, if you, the words environment, energy and conservation basically include anything, to deal with everything we just discussed.
I would imagine the mission statement might be similar to tree board, where the first part of it would be about protecting our resources. And the second part would be about engaging the public and creating stewardship for our resources.
Natural resources. So yeah, I'll probably take that then in August 18th
August 18th.
or 4th, depending on what's on the agenda for August 4th. So August 4th or 18th. Probably 18th, but. Talk with Tom about what's on the agenda.
Thanks for putting all this together. It's
Yeah,
good.
thank you.
Review, we're kind of running short on time here. We can put out invasive species the next time and then either go through Dana's, some of her edits, because invasive species, I want to have just a discussion if we want to talk about outreach ideas. So it's up to you.
I think tree canopy could wait. Do you have an update, or maybe for next time you could have
For the
an
amount of
update on
trees?
trees? going
Yeah,
in?
the status was to do them this fall, but I'll ask Lucas to see if anything changed based
Okay.
on the ice storm.
Yep. Let's say free leaf, I would say. Everybody agrees. And then maybe an update on completing the vegetation management.
We can put that on the
We could
agenda
be
for next
done.
time.
What?
For
Yeah.
next time, yeah, I can put those on the agendas first. If you're okay with that,
Because
we should,
I think it'd be important for us to figure out how much time and effort is
gonna take.
required to get the vegetation management.
yeah,
Because if we
Spend
get
several months.
that kind of done, however we define that, then we can start thinking about the conservation approach of things.
well, it's also interesting, just in my opinion, that vegetation management plan, it's not. The way we've been looking at it from the city, even the tree board, is not just for the trees, right? You know, there are the trees, but we're talking about trees, we're talking about the habitat, we're talking about the deer, we're talking about the views, like all those things kind of like when it comes to vegetation management, the bluff, for example, play into it. So it is really more of a larger scope than just trees. You know, if it was just trees, we'd be just saying, hey, here's a tree trimming, but what are we doing the tree trimming for? Why? You know, those, that kind of falls into the, you know, conservation mission. Not to say that we shouldn't work on it. I agree with you, Carol, that we need to look, see how much time it's going to take, with everything else that's going on as well, so. It has been, you know, with the ice storm, there's been more attention to trees and tree damage, and tree maintenance in the city. And quite frankly, the biggest obstacle I say we have for any kind of tree maintenance program is cost. I mean, we just don't have, you know, where's the money going to come from to do the more extensive tree maintenance that people want to see? Same, I mean, we get the same thing with our sidewalks, where, you know, we have only so much money allocated from our street millage for sidewalks, but there's obviously way more sidewalks that are damaged than we have money to do, you know, and that's why we generally have a 5, 10, 15-year plan put out there based on our finances, and it's continual work. You know, I don't ever think, very rarely find a local government that's all the work that they have to do, right? They're never gonna get to a point where like, we got nothing left to do this year. There's always more gets added to the plate.
Yeah.
So, and for trees, it's really about the budget. I know we've had these conversations before, when we talked about whether or not we should do a tree inventory with arborists, or whether we should focus more on maintenance and how much that's gonna cost. And just to remove one tree sometimes can cost $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 depending on the size of the tree. I mean, we had that issue with the tree at Blackburn's, that neighbor's property. We had to remove it. We split the cost fortunately with the historical society, but it still was several $1,000s just to remove one big tree. That's a substantial amount of our tree budget that we have. So thinking about these things as a cost perspective. So we could have a plan in place, but then we needed how much time it's gonna take to prepare that plan, and then really realistically what it is gonna cost to do this vegetation management work that we want to see. So.
Yeah, a lot of our city services, I don't think we want to have it come from another Kyle.
Right, no, I agree, but that's really what it comes down to is. Anyway, that's just my thoughts, but I'll put those on the agenda for next time since we don't have. No public
Yeah, I
comment?
thought the article was really interesting, the invasive species one, because when I started reading some of them, I thought, oh my God, I got that. I might
Everyone
have
in
had
my
those
yard,
in my
yeah.
yard, or I did have them in my yard. And so I looked at MSU has it, their extension has an invasive species list, as does the Michigan.gov.
You want to
So I think that'd be good from an
Is that-
education
The
standpoint.
Michigan State Extension list of invasive species.
Yeah.
And then Michigan.gov had one too. But I thought it was really interesting. So I think from an education standpoint, I think people will be really interested to
And dismayed.
dismayed to see what they have in their garden. what
Our
they-
city code also, when we do lot splits, our city code actually has trees that are prohibited to plant when people just do a lot split in the city right away. And I don't think they're invasive species, but they are a list of prohibited trees. Some of them are cedars and hedges, but others include like birches, for example. So it also has a list of trees that are permitted, which we should look at.
Look at, yeah.
Because we have our own right tree, right place, but
Yeah.
looking at that part of the code might get us more insight as to what the city was thinking about why they wanted these trees not planted and other ones planted. I don't think any of them were invasive, but maples were on there. There were some maples they said too, that were permittable, and other permissible, other maples they said were not permissible. So anyway. Semi-related to invasive species.
All right, anything else?
No.
Maybe you
good.
join the environmental conservation commission.
Why not?
Well, that's another thing. There will be, like you were saying, there will be more interest for that specific, I mean, because people have more wider areas, so that you definitely would get more interest.
Yeah.
You could tie more into the schools, with the schools programming as well. And there'd be more work that you could collaborate with the conservancy
And
as well
watershed.
as the project. So there's a lot more opportunities for collaboration.
MSU extend.
Yep.
All right, anything else? No. Okay,
Good.
meeting is adjourned.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.